Hey everybody, it's Baileywiki and it is November 2023 and the big monthly release is here. And wow, you are going to enjoy this one. This one is dungeon themed across the 2D stuff, the 3D stuff, and the Dungeondraft releases. We're playing with perspective here and introducing some very rich, some very flexible assets along with some ready to play scenes. And if you haven't checked it out already, you've got to check out the real-time 3D battle that we recorded and were released today, along with this video. I'll link to it in the video description in here too. But you seriously won't believe how easy it is to set up a full 3D battle along with full animations and automation. And the scene we use is actually in this release. So go grab it, watch the battle for how great it is to be a player, to be able to swirl around the battlefield and make your tactical decisions. Swift's going to have a follow-up video to that shows his entire setup process or his prep for that battle. So, like, as a GM, how would you prep for a battle like that? Knowing that you're working in a 2D world normally and you've got 2D characters and all that stuff, how do you make that transition? So with that, let's start with where to find everything, then we'll walk you through the assets and the scenes, jump around to the timestamps that are relevant to you, or play it at 1.5 times speed if you want to get the quick flyover. And with that, let's jump in. Okay, so first of all, where to find the new Foundry basic content. If you go to your prefabs, your Baileywiki prefabs, you're going to find it all in the new content. Your scenes are all going to be in the Baileywiki map towns scenes. Everything new here. This is all of your inventory scenes and all of the playable scenes that come with it. Okay, so let's walk through all of the inventory scenes and we'll get into some of the ready-made stuff. Here's all of your dungeon rooms. You can see where these are ultimately going to live. Anything that has the word multi in it is a room that has a variation. So what that means is if you have multi-face tiles installed, which is a module that we recommend, if you right-click the tile, you see more than one option here. That means that you've got more than one option. Looking at this ornate, angelic, Gothic hallway, for example, if I right-click on this, you can see I have a bloody version, clean, and then nothing at all in that hallway, just depending on what you want to do. Of course, this is bloody, and because it's red, that means you can recolor it as well. So if we wanted this to be, for example, a green liquid, you can do that also. You can just delete the filter to get rid of the color. A few different kind of ornate hallways. I wanted to create the ability to have, this kind of angelic or Gothic version of these. Here's some angelic stuff. Here's more of a dark or Gothic version. This has another version here where you can get rid of that statue. Of course, you would also just need to turn off the light, right? But it's got different lighting scenarios and things like that. We've also got these temple-themed hallways. These only have a single version of each one. You can see the level of detail in things with these new toppers, which I'll get into when I get into Dungeondraft stuff. You just really make really cool, kind of vertically interesting spaces, and you can spam them all together and they just all work really well as components. Don't forget there's a small portal here too. Happens to be under dungeon decor. And it is an overhead tile to start with, and you can change it to other things. So you can even change it to wood, metal, and there's a couple of different stone versions as well. And it's set up so that you can just throw it on a map like you see this one here, line it up with a wall, and you've got a door that you can create there. Of course, you just need to make sure the walls work those out underneath. This hallway also has some options. You can see it's got just some great, interesting statues there. And if we right click it and pick the other option, it becomes a plain hallway, which you can have make a 4-way intersection. It's just helpful to have those kinds of shapes when you're building these scenes. And then this last one, this ancient room, you have this clean version, and then you can also create and see this this version with a hole in the middle, which has got all these runes carved in it. This idea that this very ancient part of this room, and you can do a lot of different kinds of storytelling things here. You can have this room be an egress. You can come in from different ways depending on where you want to put your doors, and you'll see how I use this in some of the ready-made scenes. We also have a lot of furnishings and special components to go along with and complement this dungeon release. So you can see like we have these little temple components here. These are great for dropping in. They scale well up and down of different sizes. You've got bowls that you can use for different things, different kinds of pillars, and they're all just searchable by these names, right? So if you go into your compendiums and you just look up pillar, you'll start to see these pillars that have been available in this and other sets. Other components, and then I've got these concepts of toppers. These are things that go over walls that can help you create that kind of chunky verticality in your maps by just literally just adding a tile on top of a wall. And you can see some of them look like they really do create this kind of sense of going up. I'm going to show you how to use these, especially when I get into the statues here in a second. It's important to know like when to use things like this that have this kind of skewed perspective and when you want to go with something that is a little bit more up and down. So, speaking of different kinds of perspectives, we have our statues, and these come as sort of pre-existing. You basically like you have all these angels here, right? Well, if you drag it out onto a scene, you get a single angel, and we can release this angel from its prefab, right? Delete that. And then the tile itself has all of the angel options. They're all square tiles, so you can select the one that you like and then go forward with that. You do notice that they have different perspectives though, right? So this angel or goddess, she has a perspective where, you can see like fully the front of her. And this only works in certain kinds of scenes. And I'll explain that more in the Dungeondraft video. But I'll also show you in some of these samples. And so you can see with the different statues, some of them are a little bit more straight up and down, right? This one's really from the top. This one's from the top. And other ones, certainly this one you can look at straight down, but other ones are going to be a little bit more slanted. And so that's going to help you decide when you're going to use these, and specifically where you're going to use them, whether you're going to use them in the center of your scene or whether you're going to move them towards the edges. I really like having the options of being able to move these things around a scene and having things that do create this really awesome sense of verticality, which you'll see here in just a second. Now, this is a sample scene that you can play. You can see the lights are off. It's a little bit dark. If I make it a little bit brighter, I'll just kind of walk you through the components. This is a single tile. It also is a prefab. So if we look up, like our temple scenes, this is what that prefab looks like. When you drag it in, it's got a couple of attributes in it that are sort of interesting. One is this green color is actually a red color, and you can just select this tile and you can make that color something else. So I could change this to something like a purple. And then I just need to change my lights around here to the same color purple. That'll let me essentially change this magic area to kind of anything that I want. There's some other things that are going on here. So the overgrown vines, that is the vine overlay, and you can manipulate and change it by using your Token Magic Effects edit. What's it called? TMFX edit, the mass edit. This is in my nuts and bolts compendium. And you can see that it's got like this vines overlay applied to it. And I can rotate these around. I can adjust them. I can make them lighter or darker. I can increase or decrease the scale of these. And so, and then I can just turn it off completely, right? I can get rid of, there's actually two applied. So this is sort of like light vegetation, and turning this one makes a little bit heavier vegetation. And then you've got tooltips as you're used to seeing with maybe special things that are inside of this map that you're going to want to know about. And if you want to delete all the tooltips when you're ready, you just go to your token layer, click on this garbage can, and if you say yes, it will delete all of the notes in the map. So just make sure you get familiar with it before you do that. This is another large kind of boss or exploration room. Like the last one that you saw, your players can come in potentially from this direction, although you can create an egress anywhere using the doors that I've given you. You've got the ability to change out or delete or move this statue. If you double click into it, go into the files, you can see all the other options for statues. So you can really kind of theme this area of this room out however you want. everything, or a lot of these things like these torches can be interacted with. Your players eventually make themselves across this chasm, and you've got this like pit here. Well, this is an interesting map because this map and this chasm here actually didn't start off as black. You notice if I move this around, you can see that it's actually tainted, it's painted red, and I just colored it black using token magic effects. That's the way that you can use this to make just sort of a dark chasm. Well, this is that same map, but with a purple colored sort of magic emanating from the chasm. Again, just to give you options, use the same asset, but tell the story that you want, right? And if you wanted to change this to another color, you can just change these lights to a different color and use that same hex code that you set the lights to change the color of the chasm. And while this is one room, you could easily link multiple rooms off this using the other components of the release or many, many hundreds of other prefab components that you've got within the Baileywiki sets. Like this room, this is one version. This is sort of an angelic version of what I would imagine is a boss room. It's got some cool effects kind of floating around here. If we drop a player in, we can hear this kind of holy chanting kind of in the background. So a great room with lots of space to do some kind of, major interaction. And, your players will just see this like artwork. You can see as an example how this artwork works. It really just lifts the edges of the map and it gives this sense of verticality that you can't get when you're trying to do completely perpendicular stuff. And this is a little bit of the tutorial I wanted to show you. See, this statue works really well at the edge of the map. If I move this statue to the middle of the map, it would look skewed. Because what we're thinking of when we're looking at a map like this, if we're thinking in 3 dimensions, is everything in the middle is going to be very, very perpendicular to our sight. We're going to see the top of that angel's head. But as we move the angel statue out, we're going to see and be exposed to more of its profile. And so that's what I want you to think about as you're using these, right? This, this armored statue looks good on the edge there, but it would look a little bit different if it was in the middle of the room. So consider how much perspective the artwork has and then build your scenes based on that. Here's the same room, but now with sort of an ominous chanting going on behind it. And you can see very, very different feel, right? So this room is tinted, all the tiles are tinted slightly red, but you can see what, this just looks great, right? This kind of statue and these things hanging out in the room as your players come in, it's just very exciting and immersive when you see them kind of imposing in on the scene like they're doing here. Similar effects that you can put in the middle, although you can drop a tile into the middle and put a statue there or put something else in the middle of the scene. Snowy River Outpost is a great nighttime scene, which you can also do in the daytime. It's using some of the new wintry snowy backgrounds that I've created. This has some embedded components into it with some pieces that you can move around, right? So this is a campsite that you've seen before. You could put something else in this place. These are just tiles that you can move around, right? But you can also go in and out of these, these tents and have different battles. Again, a lot of these things are tiles that you can move around, but nice flexible scene that gives you a lot of different options as far as how you're gonna decorate it and play it. The Snowy Forest Trail is, again, this is more of a nighttime scene, but you can easily turn the lights on as well. It gives it a totally different feel, but your players come down through this trail. They're hearing the ambient noise in the background, and they can come to this sort of, ruin based here in the middle of the forest with this mysterious statue with this kind of mysterious, kind of glowing lantern. For some reason, it's kind of always glowing. And if they, venture down here, you have them pass some checks. You can click on this stump and it'll open up, whether it's a hole or whether there's something in the stump, things like that. This is just a component that you can move around and reuse in other scenes and things like that, but it's powered by Monk's active tiles. Another forest scene leveraging some of the new snowy terrains In this case, your players can come in here and they eventually find their way to this stable. The stable has all of its lights off right now, but you can turn them back on if you want to give it sort of a occupied feel. And your players can discover there's this sort of mysterious well here. There's a place where the place where horses might park. You can toggle this on and off. So, just a general all-purpose scene where you can hide enemies and create skirmishes and other things in and around the scene. Crucible of the Paladin just shows you how you can use a lot of these components just connected up in different ways. Your players can enter sort of from this area here. They can wander through the Crucible. You can create different kinds of engagements. The statue can be changed out for another type of statue. Here's different versions depending on, again, what story you want to tell. You can click into it and see even more options inside of there. And you can see again how I put the statue towards the edge of the map. It looks great when it's flaring up and over the walls like that. In some of these other pieces of the release, here's that room that you saw before, but with the version that does not have the druid statue there. Your players can then exit out this area. This is the idea that maybe this is outside, so you can hear wind blowing, sort of traverse the outside, come into this area. This room is from the old Dwarven release, but now they can see these pantheon of gods here, right? With some effects and other things that are going on. And you can, again, change these, these gods out for other kinds, depending on what story you want to tell. The subterranean layer uses some of the pieces you saw earlier. You can have your players walk into this, figure out how to get blood flowing, or maybe blood is already flowing. I imagine this is maybe underneath the keep of some vampire or something like that. Some of these other pieces, you can see how they link together. And I do have a video that's just showing you how I built some of these scenes in case you're curious. But, this door just goes over a place where I want two rooms to link up, and I just make sure that the walls make sense where they link, and now I've got a fully working dungeon. Here's an example of how I just covered the existing statue, the statue of David, in fact, with this gargoyle statue. That's how you can mix and match assets to make these subtle changes. Here I'm using the destroyed version of this room, and then I've got a secret passage going into the back, and you'll see I used a topper just on top of its existing artwork, just to make something that really looks like a player is walking under it. So, I've got a player here around this altar. They start to walk under this and they notice that there's a secret passage back here. And this is where you might put a treasure or something like that. But these toppers are a great way to show you again how you can create those secret passages without any sort of obvious thing there. The ancient temple is using all of the temple pieces combined in a way that creates a bit of a dungeon crawl. We've got, an axe sitting here that you can change into other things, right? There's all kinds of weapons and things like that within the set, or throw down some Tom Kartos or your favorite artist's implements there. But you can see how these work together. And I did do I believe, a video on this one as well, I think, just showing you how I just grabbed all these different pieces to kind of assemble these rooms. These are all tiles. You can redo all of it. And then we come into kind of this big room like you saw before, but as part of a larger dungeon crawl, right? This is more of your boss fight room. And just for a sense of scale, you can see really how big this thing is. There's a lot of space in here to have a great, great fight. There's even a little shaft of light coming in here, the edge. Caretaker's Cabin is another forest scene with some of our components set up to be a sort of a shrine. And then we've got a hovel or shack that this caretaker would theoretically live in. These are tiles. You can replace the shack with something else, get rid of it entirely, just to give you some inspiration. The Pantheon of the Gods is just a way to leverage a lot of the statues and be able to show them off. Again, all tiles, so you can change them to all, gargoyles or angels or whatever it is, but just some ways to show you how to use these things to create a story. I really like the Dawnfather's Beacon. This leverages the unlimited terrain feature, which I just randomly selected this terrain. And I thought, hey, this would be really great to build a sort of walkway up the mountains and ultimately to this shrine to the Dawnfather, which itself is just a tile. And if I go to my overhead tiles, just a tile that has a filter applied to make it look a little bit more aged. And we also have this really great, actually just stock Foundry lighting effect, kind of lighting the scepter of his. You can see it's just really one light, and it's leveraging the force grid, but shrunk down so its animation intensity creates this sort of cross effect of it. Makes it look like, especially whether this is a lit scene or dark like this one, just looks like the light's really catching. You've got kind of a crevice here. It's just a great little fight scene around something that looks very imposing and epic in scale to a character. Here's a character kind of running around underneath the Dawnfather statue. The altar of the chained god, I also really love. It's got this slowly rotating background with special lighting and other things that just make it look like we're in a pocket dimension. You can change that. This background is really just a black tile. You can delete the tile entirely, or we could, if I deleted the filter, it would get rid of the filter and it would make this whole scene a black background scene. And I just really like the imposing size of all of these gargoyles and demons that your players would find themselves around. We've got the verticality of these pillars that go up in the air if we want to put enemies up top. And, just as far as like an interesting scene where your players will freak out a little bit, got some ambient noises in here too. Just came together really well. It is all tiles, so you can play around with changing these around in different ways. A lot of creative use of chains in the near foreground and background. So hopefully it gives you guys some inspiration on how you can design your scenes. But literally, just these are all just pieces put together. There's some of the city backdrops that you saw from Elise's past, and what you can really make out of this stuff. And finally, probably my favorite, it's just simple. It's a snowy cave entrance. It's a simple map. It's a relatively small map. You got some ambient noise, but just kind of a universal, hey, I need a cave entrance map. These are just tiles with some frost overlays on them, so you can change these around. You can even change this wagon to really anything else. There's a ton of wagons, for example, in the same folder that this is in. So kind of whatever you're looking for, you can create a wagon that's got the things that you want, or just delete the tile entirely and just use the map as you see it. All these maps can be lit up in daytime. I just really like the lighting effects and the immersion of doing nighttime stuff. So that's it for the Foundry basic release. Next up, we're going to give it over to Swift to talk about the 3D stuff.
Hey troops, Swift here for the 3D portion of the update. This month's content is quite straightforward, but there's quite a lot of little details. In short, it's a new tile set, a whole bunch of pieces of structure set up to be easy to snap together in 3D canvas in order to make maps relatively quickly and easily. Though in this case, we've got a lot of little pieces to add details to. We've got things like arches, pillars, various walls of varying shapes, some with doorways, some without, various crumbled walls as well, and a set of these big 2x2 chunks here to kind of fill in space without using up hundreds of tiles. We've got a few individual pieces here, like this obligatory pit, of course, an opaque one and a transparent one if you need to be able to see inside it, and then a whole lot of platform pieces. So these will work with the rest of the tile set, of course, but because they just snap to the grid, you could use these pieces to make platforms and plinths with any sort of other tile set or on any sort of map. We've got standalone stairs too, of course, and then a whole big set of railings to go with the various flat pieces and the various slope pieces and stairs and such as well. And then we've got various pieces of wall trim in order to decorate some of the walls from earlier. Further down, we've got pillars, and more pillars, as well as this kind of arched buttress piece here, which, is made to make this sort of giant flying buttress piece here for, supporting very tall buildings. So this is a lot of little pieces, and there's a lot of things you can do with them, but it's kind of difficult to envision exactly what sort of things you can build with it, just with it here exploded on the ground. So what we've also got are a set of rooms here. I mean, I'm calling them rooms, but they're kind of open air. Each one of these big sort of structure chunks is a single object. As you can see here, I can just select that and then move it around as I like. And they all snap to the grid and to each other, though with some of them you might have to open up the configuration and turn off auto ground just to make sure they're at the right height so that they snap together nicely. And then these are divided into various different types. We've got things like corners here, where the path comes in from one side and goes out the other. We've got things like corridors, or well, I'm calling them corridors down here, where it's straight shots. Some with stairs, some with bridges, various pieces with various different types of walls. And then we've got T-junction type blocks as well, where we've got a path coming in and then also a path coming out in another direction. And some of those can get rather large, like this piece over here. It's just one big piece. It should be nice and efficient, but is a massive structure, just to kind of give you an idea of what kind of things you can put together with all the pieces that we had on the last screen. Like you can see all the sort of pillar arch pieces up here, the railings, the sort of block arches here, stairs and so on. So all of these are made with all the pieces that we saw on that last scene. But even with these here all arranged and built up, it's still kind of difficult to envision what kind of things you could put together with it. So let's look at some of the maps for this month. This first map I'm calling the Underdark Bridge, and it's intending to be an ancient bridge constructed by some precursor civilization, or one of the civilizations of the Underdark, and the bridge goes over a great dark chasm, so there's just blackness below. Layout-wise, it's pretty straightforward. We've got a straight shot to a T-junction here, with the lower path takes you to this large open platform over here. This could be the site of some sort of ritual, a place for the party to camp, maybe, or of course just a good old-fashioned boss arena. And on either side we've got sort of dead-end blocks here with barred off chambers. Back at the T-junction, we've got a straight shot that travels along through the darkness to another exit from the bridge that goes further down into the abyss below. Just to show the flexibility of this sort of these structure pieces, though, this is an alternate version of the same map set in the caldera of a volcano. So I'm calling it the Caldera Bridge map, because what adventure is complete without a trek across a lake of lava? As you can see, this one's got a very different atmosphere to it. We've got very bright lights coming from below, but the sky above is dark, so there's very little light falling on the top of the bridge. So there's this interesting interaction between the lights and shadows here. Since this bridge is above ground, this might be rather well suited to an open-air boss battle against something like a dragon or something else that flies, or maybe something like a huge fire elemental or something that comes out of the lava and sweeps fire across the bridge. For completeness sake, there's also a daytime version of the map, which is has got much simpler lighting. It's just the sunlight above and the lights down below. And I think this map actually feels kind of calmer, despite the fact that it is still very much in the middle of a lake of lava. I think this might be good for, a kind of after the sunrise scene, if you've just spent the last scene on here fighting a boss, for example. For a rather more down-to-earth use of the tile set, and a very different mood altogether, we've also got this rather ornate stone bridge over a meandering river. This map is using the splat map shader again, so it's of course very customizable. In this case, I've mixed snow in with the grass to make this wintry effect. The structure here I kind of intended to be like a remnant of some sort. Like, it's very large and ornate, much bigger than you'd need, so it kind of implies that it's created by a more capable precursor civilization who could, spend resources on something like this. I think advanced precursors are the kind of theme that fits really well into any sort of tabletop campaign. But overall, this is a nice exterior map with, bumpy terrain, bushes, trees. A rather nice looking map for any sort of bridge encounter. Also, there is a night version of the map here. There's a full moon out, so it's not particularly dark, but it is a rather nice mood overall, I think, with this kind of cooler blue lighting. Next up is the throne room. This will look familiar if you've seen the 3D canvas battle video. This map was used as a boss arena for our 3-man adventuring party, using some of our older tiles because I still think they look great. I think there's a lot of value in them for making any sort of dungeon environment. In the session, we used normal 2D Foundry right up until the party approached this door over here, and then we just sort of swapped scenes to this one. So remember, you can just use even individual encounters as 3D to make, more of an impression if you've got a boss that you really want to impress the party with. From a rather simple map to a rather more comprehensive one, this is the first of Violet's maps for this month, and it is called The Foundry. It's another classic dungeon map, and a great example of the capabilities of the Dungeons and Interiors tool. All these rooms were very simple to build, just click and drag squares to set up the walls, use the cut tool to cut out doorways, and then stick doors in them. No need to configure walls or anything like that. It's all taken care of by the line of sight in 3D Canvas. So this is a great example of the kind of possibilities that you get just for the tools that are built into 3D Canvas. This one's a pretty dark map, so your party are going to want to bring torches. And now that I mentioned that, if you've got token attacher, you can actually just attach a light source to a player's token so that it follows them around as they move around. Now that's a great way to kind of give a bit of light to someone whose token might be holding a torch, for example. Anyway, this is a very classic tabletop-style dungeon, culminating in a chasm over here, with some waterfalls flowing down over the edge, making great use of these water shaders here. This leads neatly onto our next map, though. This is the Black Lake. This one is very cool, I think. We've got a waterfall ending in this pool with a big splashing effect here, and then a natural cave following this underground river. The river ends in a underground lake with an island at the center that's just covered in a hoard of treasure. Of course, there's never a hoard like this without danger, and in this case we've got plenty of room for it because underneath we've got an underwater environment down below the lake here. This is the perfect place to hide something like a water serpent or some other huge boss laying in wait for the party, or whatever else you might imagine for this. Lots of space for a vertical encounter in here. Anyway, I think that's enough of a quick look for now. As ever, feedback is welcomed and encouraged, so leave a comment below or down in our Discord. For now, though, I'll see y'all later.
Okay, so let me show you what we've got here for Dungeondraft, because it's like a ton of new stuff. This inventory scene, this first inventory scene, has a bunch of the new pieces, right? And this just shows you what their tags are and like what the file is called, right? So if you're looking for bowls, you've got colorable versions. You got all these different stone pieces, which you can use as the top of walls. You can use them for floor decorations. It's really, really good. And then you've got all of these stone pieces that work super well, by themselves, of course, but also when you put pieces on top of them. So you can make these really complex, really ornate pillars and other components just by kind of stacking these things, right? These just have like a bunch of different interesting edges and detail work in them that kind of, depending on what you're trying to make, you can really make a cool aesthetic. Do have some colorful versions of all those. These are stone pieces a little bit more decorated. You'll see how they work in a bunch of different ways, but you can use edges of them, right? You can have edges poke out and use kind of one side. You can stack them on top of each other. If we go in here and we look up stone pieces and we grab some of these things, let's go under with this. And like they just do interesting things as you start to put them together. So I encourage you to start mixing and matching and seeing how they work together, how you can just really make some cool designs that look like they were made that way, right? Or supposed to be that way. Here you've got the toppers. These are very large. By the way, all of these pieces scale up really, really large. And that's so that you can make some of that really chunky, interesting maps, right? There's nothing on these that imply a particular scale, right? I can make it as small as just something that goes on a desk to something that's quite huge. And these toppers are just supposed to go over walls, which I'll show you here in a second. And we've got some pillars that are kind of ready-made using the method I showed you earlier, just so you can drop them in really easily. First, we have all of our statues. We have them in colorable and non-colorable versions. You've got your angels, right, which can also be sort of goddesses and gods. You've got your gargoyles. You've got your druids, different varieties. humans and knights. Oh, and then of course you've got the gods down here. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but from a design perspective, some of them are very much top down like this. This means that this statue can go almost anywhere in any map from a top down perspective. The more profile you see, the more you have to use these only on the edges of your maps, right? So I'm seeing a lot of this statue's profile. That means he's going to go better at the edge of a map where I'm expecting my perspective to skew. So keep in mind, like this knight can go in a lot of different places, but this knight or this knight, that's a lot of profile. They're going to go best at the edge of a scene up against a wall where you expect your vision to skew. These gargoyles are pretty top down that you can get away with putting them almost anywhere. And these, here's a great statue to put sort of anywhere, whereas something like this one's going to have to go towards the edges of your scene. Of course, I show you how I make all those sample scenes in here. You can come in and see what I did as far as terrain brushes. I'm using some epsilon brushes here along with a lot of stuff that I've made, but you can just come in here and deconstruct how I made these things. Remember, if you're using mods and I click on this, I'm using the Essential Utils mod, I can see object info. So I can see where this came from. Here's the asset name, and I see it came from Baileywiki base 01 artificial. It's going to help you figure out where to find some of the assets that I'm using, right? These rust and other assets are a little bit harder to find, but you can find them because it doesn't work, I think, with Essential Utils, but you can find them when you look through some of Epsilon stuff. Here's how I made the sort of angelic room, the paladin room. You can see how I've splayed these out along the edges because that's where my eye would sort of expect to see them skewed towards, whereas the stuff in the middle is a little bit more perspective neutral, right? But isn't this great? Like being able to pull up and sort of show the walls of a room is, I think, really interesting to train to get into. You see all the different rooms that I built, how they're built, how they're designed. These are using, white because I will, in post-processing, I will select all of this and make it transparent. That's how I end up making these tiles the way that you see them. But you can see, just get really creative. Don't, be bold. Here's a topper and how much space it covers, right? But be bold with these pieces because they really do scale very, very well. And you can make really, detailed, dense scenes really easily with them, right? More of how these were created. You can take these toppers and kind of bunch them up and make whole walls that just feel like they're climbing really high into the, towards the eye. Here you've got your gargoyle demonic version of this room. Remember, this is all white, but because it's white and it's neutral, I can make it really any color I want once I bring it into the VTT. More rooms and techniques for you to follow. And then here's some of the sample winter scenes that I made. You can come in here, go to your terrain brush, and see all the brushes that I used to create. You see there's quite a few brushes I used to create this. I dropped in some of these assets, right, because I wanted some things kind of embedded in. But, this started as, one texture, and then I painted in all the other textures until I shaped the road the way I wanted it. Same thing with this scene, dropped a couple of assets in just to make it kind of flexible for anything, but otherwise pretty quickly and easily made, a snowy path through the forest. And last, this scene here, the embedded components I put in just to, again, make them sort of flexible in terms of scale, but at the end of the day, having something where you can have exploration and battles and other things. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoy learning how I created these, and come in here and make them your own, customize them, do other things to them, and figure out how I architected them so that you can do something similar or even better. Now I'm going to hand it over to Zephyr to talk about the rest of the Dungeondraft release.
New in the Baileywiki Assets APAC, are a collection of siege weapons. So our first installment for siege weapons are these different ballista. You can see that we have 4 principal different designs. We have a pretty basic crossbow, a more ornamental one. We have kind of an elvish and an orcish variant that's kind of mounted on a bug. All of these have colorable versions as well, and we also have some destroyed versions of the more traditional looking ballista. The bases are available separately, and the crossbows themselves can be taken off separately to be used as crossbows rather than siege weapons or siege mounted ballistas. You can just scale these down to suit whatever size you need for portraying ballista or crossbow being held at the gates or in an armory, etc. Or maybe you want to use one of these as a thumbnail for a custom weapon that you're creating for a player. To go along with all of the ballista and crossbows, we have a wide array of arrows. As you can see, the arrow heads vary greatly from design to design, so this really gives you the pointy implement for your operation of choice. The colorable versions have colorable fletchings to help you differentiate between, say, different armies or factions with their arrows, or just showing what birds may have been used for the actual fletching methods. There are also arrows that are struck into the ground, which is great for decorating a battlefield or something similar. And then we have 4 magical arrow designs if you want to add a bit of an arcane feel to one of your archers. These work excellently as thumbnails or as sparingly used set pieces because they are rather vibrant. And finally, we have a really big expansion to the tool system here. As you can see, there's a variety of new tools. They have a slightly more medical bent to them, but there are a lot of other pieces, such as the drill here, and then there are a wide array of knives and different medical tools, and all of those have colorable versions as well. So you can really decorate out your infirmary or your mad science lab with a wide array of implements. You may want to size these up or down in order to fit the space more, but they are there for you in high detail. And that's going to conclude the additions for the Baileywiki Assets A pack for November 2023. As always, let us know what you like about this pack, what you don't like about this pack, and what we should work on next.
So that's it. I hope you guys love this release as much as I do. There's so many good things in here that I'll be using forever after this, as far as my design work goes, and as I'm preparing for games and stuff for VTT. Let us know in the comments if there's any design ideas that you have, any directions you'd like us to take, any missing parts of the library. We love to build things. We do a lot off of just even one kind of random word from a community member. I'll build whole releases off of that. So definitely hit me up on Discord or tell us in the comments, even better here, what you think we should do next. In the meantime, have fun, everybody, making your maps.